We had completed Workday Studio Platform Introduction Part 1. Now we are into Part 2. Okay, for Part 2, high security basics and Workday security features. So what is Workday security, or what are the basic securities available to us in Workday? Workday has separate security requirements to set up and launch integration systems, including EIBs based on the integration type. Below are the integration related security domains and permissions that are granted for each domain. So if you see there as a security kind of setup related to each of the tasks related to and creating or configuring any of the integrations. Like to configure an EIB, we need integration configuration to configure one or more integration services, and that's also covered under integration configure. Then to create or edit EIBs, we have integration build. To create or edit any other integration system using a specific template, again it is integration build. To deploy it from a Workday Studio platform, that's also secured by integration builder domain. To debug Workday Studio integrations is also integration debugger. To launch an EIB, we need put permissions on a Workday web service operation. We need get permissions on a Workday web service operation. It is if it is an outbound, put would be if it is an inbound EIB. Access to custom reports, we need integration EIBs is one of the domains that we need to launch the EIB integration. But to build it would be integration build. It's an integration event, of course, is required when you are going to review any of the integration events or even launch and see the launch parameters, because each of the launch instances we do gets created as an integration event on the Workday. Okay, again, for any other integration other than EIB, we need an integration event security domain. To set up an EIB, integration EIB is required. Now coming to scheduling an EIB or scheduling and integrations, these are separately governed by, say, scheduling and integration is governed by integration event domain. But scheduling an EIB again needs your put and get access to the web services. This will be what would be required in case of inbound EIBs, and get would be required in case of outbound EIBs. Access to custom report, again, when the data source is a custom report, then the access to the custom report is required, and the same domains like integration EIBs and integration events. The last one is view and integration subscription. So you remember we have something called as integration subscription, CW, or to subscribe a particular kind of BP or a transaction type that is secured under integration domain. Okay. Coming to Workday security features, the first one is encryption, second is log file management, third is authentication. Then we have best practices that we need to follow that falls under security features. Then we have data transmission security and access control. Let's see what are these one by one. So encryption, Workday uses advanced encryption standard AE 256-bit key size for data encryption. Log file management. It's crucial to handle log files securely in Workday Studio. Remove all logging components from Studio Cloud before deploying to production. This we will be reviewing when we go ahead and create certain studios. So right now we are just introducing you with the features and the things we have, or any kind of UI availabilities on the Workday Studio platform. But there is also a component called as log file, which in turn helps you to, say, log an incoming message or log an output of a particular component or a field onto the log file and see within the studio run how different components are behaving. So these log files are created in a text file, but these should be used only while developing, building, or testing the integrations. And while we deploy it after our successful testing into production, we could be removing those log files from the class, because these log files take up the memory when they write on the log, and when they process the log files also, they are performance. So it's ideal to, or best practice, to remove these log files when you are moving to production. Okay, set sensitive integration launch parameters or attributes as password type instead of text to mask the asterisk. Again, there is an attribute or launch parameter as password that can be used at various instances if required. That can save a password, which will help you hide whatever value it contains on the UI. It will not show you, it will show you aspects instead of the. Coming to the third feature, authentication. Workday Studio supports various authentication methods, including OAuth, JWT, or secure API access. Use integration. Use integration system users, ISUs, dedicated integration accounts, avoid the need of share individual user credentials. As we have already seen in case of ISUs or integrations, we do create certain specific ISUs for integrations we try to run and deploy to production. We assign ISUs so that later on we do not have this dependency that the integration run or the schedule run is being carried over one particular user's account, and if he leaves the organization, it hampers the behavior of the integration event or the integration. Coming to best practices, store sensitive information like client secrets in environment variables not in the code. Again, goes to mostly specific to XSLTs. So in XSLTs, it is required that you use variables instead of having those sensitive informations on the code. You use variables in the within the class, and you declare these variables, and you use them within the Studio Assembly while doing an XSLT or while doing any kind of transformation, and you don't end up writing that sensitive information again and again. Encrypt credentials for added protection. Regularly rotate credentials to reduce risk. So these are certain things when we create PGP encryptions or PGP keys to encrypt or decrypt our files, inbound or outbound files for a vendor use. So the key should always be regularly, like frequently, at the frequency of a 6 months or 1 year, they should be refreshed and new key pair should be generated and configured in integration. Apply the principle of least privilege by assigning ISUs only the minimum information. So this goes in line with the thing we discussed while creating ISUs. So for ISUs, what you do is like you started with the main data source. Say in terms of reports, you start with the main data source access that you have for the report. So the main data source or the main primary business object access would be given initially, and then you try do a hit and trial run. Each time you run the integration, you see the outputs are coming or not. If there is any particular field which is not coming and rest of the fields are working fine, then you add only the permissions of that particular field. So in this manner of going multiple instances back and forth to configure the integration, we end up using minimum security domains to be assigned to ISUs so that we do not allow them any kind of open access to which it should not be provided or required for. Data transmission security. Workday provides encryption, decryption, and signature options using technologies like PGP and X509 for secure communication with external endpoints. It sits inside Workday. If I will show you, like we have tasks like create PGP key, create X509 public key or private key. So what this helps is helps you create a kind of a public and private key pair to be used for encryption and decryption purposes. You do not have to go outside to the keys. Workday will help you do that. And how we use it and how we configure this, we will be seeing it on a later stage. Then certificate information is public key. So public key is something that would be provided by the vendor here. So this is how we generate kind of a PGP key to be used. Okay. So we use the PGP private key pair, and this will hold a private key inside for Workday, and the public key would be displayed. So this public key you can use with the vendor, like you can share with the vendor so that it can use it to encrypt or decrypt it there and we are sending. And how we use it inside a studio, we will be seeing when we configure the assemblies. Okay, but that was just a task to show you how we can create any kind of encryption keys within Workday and not refer to anything on the open source system. Going ahead, access control, implement role-based security access, utilize SAML like SSOs and X590 certification authentication for user and web service integration. So SAML or SSO is mostly used by integrations while accessing Workday these days. So this directly relates to your configuration of your AD account, your Windows username or password, or any kind of central username or password your organization is maintaining to authenticate into any of your applications being used within the organization. So we have that capability within Workday as well to set up an SSO for authentication. And implement role-based security access is something that we see, like as we are not able to at times. I am able to say access those, create custom report and create calculum because I have a role-based security that is covering those domains that is protecting these two particular tasks. But the role-based security you guys have been added to is not having those access. So that's a typical example how the role-based security can provide you access to different kind of tasks and options available in Workday tenant. Okay, so that.
Can you explain what is this SAML like? Do we configure or do something on the integration level?
No, we do not do this. Is on tenant level. This talks about access controls on your Workday tenant specifically. So you utilize SAML or sign-on. I would say like you have your SSOs for any of the organization applications, right? Like these days, everyone is using, say, for your Outlook or your payroll systems or any kind of benefit provider systems. What they do is like maintain your AD ID, that is mostly your Windows username or password, or the email you have, or the employee ID you have, and the password of central password. And then they use that same username or password to log into different applications.
Yeah,
So even
I get
for
that.
work,
Means I know what is single sign-on, but how to utilize SAML for single sign-on for the tenant access? Is this something integration developer will do?
no, it is like basically on the security admin kind of thing. We are discussing what kind of possibilities we have. This is a definite. Say, what we have that studio. Do we have Workday Studio? So that tenant setup. So there is a task called tenant setup, and which would have these SSO, or I would say SSO URLs and the permission to be configured to. But that does not falls under the integration configuration part. Okay.
And at what level do we do that encryption decryption? Because I think for outbound,
Encryption decryption we do on integration level, but SAML authentication is for user access. Like role-based security and SAML is for user access. But encryption and decryption we do like data transmission security. That this particular thing falls under integration security. So any kind of file you see, right, we configured. Say,
no, but I think when we do a outbound integration, right? So we get the keys from vendor,
right.
right? So that is so. At what level we do this encryption? When do we need to create the encryption decryption key within Workday?
You need to, you say when you do, you get a key from vendor, then that is a public key. So you create a public key and install that in the create public key pair, and then install that certification, and then use that same key that you have generated using the public key provided by the vendor to say the file that is incoming. Yes. So
I have one more question. What is the difference between the public and private keys?
public keys are mostly say there these encryptions work in pair, like a private key and a public key. Private key is maintained by the source who generates these key. So I would be say encrypting a file and maintaining a private key. So I would know how to what is encrypting or what are the properties that are helping me to encrypt this file. But how would the vendor know at their end when they are transmitted with the file or data? How can they decrypt it? So for that we use a public key. So once these pairs are set up, we keep the private key to ourselves. We provide them the public key, and once these public keys are configured at their end, whenever the file is transmitted, they use the same public key to decrypt the file, and then they can view the data. Similarly, if they are sending or maybe they are containing or maintaining these keys, they would share us with a public key, and they would maintain a private. Okay,
Okay.
so
So
that is
also, like, do we need to maintain these keys, whatever we created separately, the PGP for the integrations? Do we need to maintain anywhere in the tenant? Is there any task for that?
that as I told you that task like create private key or create public key, you need to.
After creating those keys, like either of them, so do we need to maintain in this tenant, like, so we are using this PGP key for so and so integration. Do we need to maintain those keys, like, so and so public key one? Do we need to maintain all those like PGP keys under one task?
We do not need to maintain. As soon as you create a public or a private key, it would be stored with those instances. Like as soon as I have created, right, create, I can have a option again to view key. Okay, so these view PGP public key or X509 keys will give me all the keys I would have created. See, so there's only one currently. So this has been created and I can see it using a view task. And if I say want to and use it in under the encrypt using, you can say all, and then you have this key available. So that's where you use this key. On the particular integration within the document delivery or document retrieval, you use this encryption or decryption key.
Okay, the same key will be used for the number of integrations. Either it might be core connector. I mean, we are passing with the vendor and we are using the same key with core
No,
connectors and EIBs and
use usually it is particularly one kind of PGP key per vendor and per mostly like if it is the same vendor doing same thing like having a same kind of delivery mechanism, they provide with the key and we maintain. But it's definitely one vendor, one key, or one vendor, one integration, one. You do not end up using the same key for every vendor and every kind of integration. It usually depends upon the type of vendor you are working with. Mostly in the cases, you have that particular vendor using one set of public and private keys for all the files they are delivering to us or getting delivered to them.
so suppose like I'm working and so like I'm maintaining some the integrations are on my name, that are over there, and at some point, like, there will be another developer like who newly hired and all. So like at that point, like we need to maintain some kind of PGP keys at somewhere in the tenant. So do you have any idea about that, like
In the tenant,
maintaining?
I showed you, right? That's where we maintain already these keys. You saw all the keys being used. As soon as you are assigning it to an integration or a delivery or a retrieval, it will show you inside the integration configuration that this particular PGP key is being used. And to see all the PGP keys with the effective date that it is particularly available, that valid from and valid to date, that is available using the view key task.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And when we get the PGP key from vendor, we would be doing a create PGP key task.
right, right. When you get the PGP key, you would be doing a create public key task, and you will use that public key because they provide us with the public key. And when you are providing, you will create a private key. You will use the private key task, and that will generate a public key for you that you can share with the vendor. So it's
Right. Okay.
vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a valid till date. So in typical scenarios, you guys maintain those dates.
Right. So these
So
are
that is the only maintenance that I believe you have to do. So and you need to keep a track of those validations. If not,
exactly.
right?
So what it does is, that's a good point, because what it does is when you maintain these dates, as soon as these expiry, like I believe within a month or so or couple of weeks, when this expiry date is reaching out, the integration will show certain warning, and also there are tasks as I believe an audit or things, exception audit for integrations, which are like the monitoring or configuring, like not just related to integration, but your day-to-day production maintenance that the production team does. So it will highlight if there are any keys that are expiring in the near future. It will highlight to them, and what they need to do is like refresh the key and send it or share it with the vendor again, or maybe ask them to get that. Say if that is a key maintained at their end, we might ask them to refresh it and share the public key again.
Okay. And a follow-up question on another one. So if the vendor is providing the key, should we really create a key or just use the key inside the Workday alone?
No, how would you use a key unless until you create, say,
Studio, right? So I couldn't figure it out how it is. So you need to create a key, but replace
right,
this portion
right.
with the vendor provided values.
Exactly. So unless until you create a particular instance or say object to hold that public key, you cannot use that, right? So as soon as you get this, and it's not just relevant to Studio, I would say, even for say CCW output, like I was showing you, you can configure on the delivery, say they provided and they want the encryption to be done in a particular manner, so they provide you with the public key. So you use this public key to and these like once the PGP key has been created, you mark this in under the encrypt using section. You use this. You have this, right. This is how you encrypt, even if it is a CCW output, not the studio. So this is how you do it, and you just save. So every time this output file would be generated from the CCW, it will be encrypted in the by using this. And the private key, they would be holding it, so they can decrypt it using that particular private key.
Okay.
So yes, you first need to create an instance of the key, and then only you would be having that option to select in your drop down to encrypt. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the topic for Workday Security.
Are you going to show us how to decrypt if we have an encrypted file? How to decrypt it? Can you show us in the studio?
Show you the configuration, and in the studio we do not do anything of that sort. We do it on the configuration on the business, yes, process level. The process I showed you, I cannot say have encrypted file and retrieval. As I told you, we do not have that SFTP configuration available to us. I can definitely show you like how I showed you on the delivery how to configure, but if you want a real instance, like we get an encrypted file, that is not possible because we do not have something in the real time and get it the SF. But I can show you the configuration where, in case you are getting, where you will be configured.
Okay. Yeah, please show us.
So I think for that as well, yeah, in particular, if I'll just try to, like we had for any kind of so this is by document retrieval. Okay, so once the document retrieval has been configured and you set up a particular file, say you have this file pattern, right? Like we were talking about, like every time your SFTP file will have a dynamic name, so you cannot give a constant. So what you do is like pick the initials or the first initial part or any kind of part from the file name and use it with a pattern kind of thing, so that your retrieval is able to identify that, okay, I should be looking for this pattern. Then you have to again get this SFTP configuration being set up. Okay. And then in the advanced setup, host key, fingerprint, user ID. Okay, so you have this decrypt using. Okay, so this is something, a private key, for instance, that has been generated, that has been saved and created on your Workday tenant. This is okay. So we tell them to encrypt using the public key, and we host or we save this private key at our end. So we use this private key for any kind of file that is incoming and has been encrypted using the public key provided by us to them. So we use the option in here. You have this file utilities, and that you have this decrypt using that particular private key, and that's it. That's the configuration you do. You give the user ID, password, or any kind of like SSH authentication or dual authentication, whatever has been required. Usually it is SSH authentication these days. So, or username password is also one of the common ones. So as soon as we configure that, we will be able to extract the file, and that will happen in Workday. Once the file has been extracted from SFTP, Workday integration will get to know, okay, we have a decryption key available to us, and it will use that particular private key to decrypt the incoming information. Okay.
So at certain point, it will be expired in the PGP key. So like
Right.
at that point, like yeah,
we'll have to maintain. So these are certain. I believe there are certain guidelines by Workday as well. So it automatically also kind of sees if integration PGP key or any X509 key have a valid from date beyond a particular time, I believe couple of years. It also gives then warnings on the exception audits, which are being used to monitor the tenant at the day-to-day production level. So it gives a warning, and it will tell you that this is a very old key that you have been using, please. Okay, and this is also one of the common practices that we do in our Go Live tenant. Go Live has been done that we do a periodic activity every year, one for scheduled processes. So all the scheduled processes in the integration, like in your tenant, Workday recommends that you schedule it till year end, like till 31st of December. And at the end of the year, what you do is like you do an activity and try to create new schedules in advance for each of the integrations, starting from the 1st of January or the first week of January, whenever you want the first one to be. So that's what it recommends, that you have a schedule for each of the. It can go up to, if you'll see right on the schedule, it will take a date up to couple of years, but it is generally on any of the documentation, it says Workday recommends that you use it only till end of the year, current year, and you create different kind of instances for the new schedule for the next year. Similarly, this is also one of the year-end activities. You refresh your PGP keys that are being used various levels on the integrated. Now,
I don't know if there is a way to do it, but just to ask, so if an integration is running into an error, right? Like there are hundreds of integrations and one of them is error out and we need to send a notification.
right.
So how can we do that?
So that comes on, say, a part of notification setup. Okay, so say this is the demo. So this was one of the CCWs we created. If you want to do a configuration of the sort you were saying, that we create a notification with, so we go to related actions, we go to integration systems, and then we have a configure notification kind of thing. So on this, what it will do is trigger status on, trigger notification on. You have the field completed with errors, mostly these, and there is also one as aborted. On these, this kind of statuses, when the integration completes with these statuses, these particular three statuses, it has error, it has failed, or it is aborted. We generally do not enable this for warnings unless specified very much, specifically specified by our our clients, because it will end up having a lot of emails in their inboxes, which usually the errors that we go for. So any fatal error that has happened in the integration, it aborted the integration. what we do is either have a group available to us, or what in general all the clients have is a particular DL for our process monitor teams to be created, and that particular DL you can enter in here. From here you can create a format of the subject line and the body of the email. Okay, so you can configure different kind of fields in here with the integration status, integration event link, and as soon as these integrations complete with this particular statuses, it will trigger these notifications to the email ID specified. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, that's how we configure a notification, and then that's specific. That's not specific to just CCWs. That's valid for any kind of integration. Say if I will show you, if I'll go ahead and try to show you this EIB, even on EIB we have the same setup page or configuration page available to us, which is configure integration notification. And you can do the same thing with an EIB to send an error on any of the statuses as failed, aborted, or integration has errors on particular fields or roles. Okay, so that's valid to any kind of integrations, including EIBs, any kind of studio integrations, any kind of core connectors, everything. Coming to part 3 of our studio integration introduction. So what do we have in the, okay, so this will guide you through the different, I would say, what is different parts of a platform that we use to develop integration studios. So integration platforms, like platform we have is the studio platform that is developed on Eclipse, right? So all these different navigations we have, or different tabs we have. So this particular introduction to various parts and navigations of the platform will be done here. So the agenda would have workspace, perspective, views, project explorer view, cloud explorer view. So I think we discussed cloud explorer view and project explorer view already. But yes, workspace, perspective. So this is relevant because if I'll start working directly on Studio with you, you won't be able to get yourself familiarized with the UI of the Workday Studio platform or the application. There would be certain things I would be doing directly, and you would be confused, like, why are we doing that? So that's why we get ourselves familiarized with each of these options that are available to us and the terminologies we use, like what is a workspace, what is a view, what is a project. Okay, so coming to workspace, a workspace is a logical collection of projects. A workspace is a directory on your hard drive where Studio stores the projects that you define to it. Your workspace path should not include spaces because the Studio debugger will not work. Connection details are associated with your current work. If you switch or create a new workspace, you will need to configure your connection details. To change your workspace or create a new one, navigate to files, which workspace, and then others. The workspace launcher dialog box will open and allow you to browse for a manually enter a new workspace location. Okay, so talking about workspace, as I think even workspace we discussed, yes, it's just like kind of a directory on your local machine where your studio has been installed. So, for instance, we have this directory under the users, and they are doing, say, on a particular user, say, I think they have WT per user, or maybe for any of the
So projects are stored in local.
Right. Projects are like when you're working out unless until they are deployed onto the cloud, they are stored in local. That's where I mentioned even that anything you see on the Project Explorer thing, right? Under this Project Explorer, there are no projects in your workspace. And unless until all the projects are mentioned, if you delete any of the projects, it from the workspace, it will also be deleted from in. So Project Explorer is something referencing to your workspace, and Cloud Explorer is something that is referencing to your Workday tenant. So now you see I've asked them to configure the Workday tenant for us. So now these are all the integrations, studio integrations we have in particular tenant configured for us. Say you see adjust continuous service date, INT, okay. If I'll go ahead and what's the name? int for to the continuous adjust continuous service data load. So you see on the project Cloud Explorer, we were able to see that there is a studio integration with this name, and we can also confirm it by searching for the same name on the Workday tenant UI, and that's how it works. So anything on the Cloud Explorer is something that has been deployed to Workday and is available in your Workday tenants. And the Project Explorer may or may not have projects that are deployed or not sure, because this is referencing to your workspace. That is your directory in your local machine or your hard drive where the studio has.
If I need to rework on an integration, I need to download it from cloud,
Right. Store
Explorer,
into your work
and bring it your
workspace.
local, and then bring that into the Project Explorer, work
Right.
on it, test it, deploy it back to cloud.
Right. So you need to store it into your workspace, and it will automatically pop up in your Project Explorer. Okay. Or the other things we saw, right? Like import it using a class. So as soon as we import it using the downloaded class from the tenant, it will be stored on your workspace and available to you under the project.
Okay.
So can we have a source control here, like GitHub or anything?
Like that is not relevant to, I think if you want to do, you have to maintain it separately, like your design documents or class. If you want to maintain on GitHub, you can do it separately, but it's not connected to your Workday Studio.
There is no plugin. Okay.
No plugin. You'll have to manually say you want to do a version control every time you make a change. You'll have to manually upload that particular class with some date time stamps or different name versions. So yeah.
Okay.
Coming back to our slide. Okay, so to change the workspace, maybe if I want to show you, we have this file option in here, and which workspace is this option, and then if we go to others, currently I'm using this users admin workspace. So if I go to have access to the directory or not, because that's an admin, this PC users are infected when again I do not have access to. So they have configured the directory under the namespace. That's why we were not able to get it, because we did not load on a proper directory where it can look for. So yeah, since we are using an RDP and they have a limited access given to us regarding these directories because of limitations on the RDP and the access provided to us, we cannot see. Otherwise, what it does is like you can have a particular path for your directory and get configured in here. And also when you launch the studio, like we have asked them to launch the studio and get it configured for classes because of the credential issue. What it does is like as soon as you open, what we say, or launch the studio integration application, it will ask you for the workspace. So say if you have multiple projects, you're working on multiple projects, you might want to create multiple workspaces for each of the clients. So every time you are using or opening the studio, you will get to say look for that particular workspace and then open the studio. So it will automatically on the Project Explorer, it will show you the integrations relevant to that particular workspace of the kind. And that's where it gets useful to say change a workspace or look for different work. That's where it is relevant. When you're working on multiple workspaces, if you go here, current workspaces, there's what you want to do a different kind of select a directory as workspace and then use a different one. It will go ahead and create a new one and under a particular name, under a particular directory on your hard drive. So that is about workspaces. Then we have perspective. Okay. Each workspace window contains one or more perspective. A perspective defines the initial set of layout of views in the workspace window. Within the window, each perspective shares the same set of editors. Each perspective provides set of functionalities aimed at accomplishing a specific type of task or works with specific type of resources. Perspectives control what appears in certain menus and toolbars. They define visible action sets which you can change to customize a perspective. You can save a perspective that you build in this manner, making your own customized perspective that you can open again later. Workday delivers a custom perspective that defaults when you open Workday Studio. Okay, the Workday perspective provides one-click access to pages within the Workday application that are relevant to integration development in general for specific Workday Studio cloud integration. And the first time that you open the Workday view within a Studio section, the Workday view displays the Workday login page, right? So that's after you enter the login. So these are certain things when you launch the Studio application, you get to select the workspace as well as the login credentials. You'll have to enter a particular login credentials. It will not authenticate on the login step, but yes, it will open the studio, and if the credentials are not correct, it will give an error later on that we are not able to load any Cloud Explorer. But yes, as soon as you launch the application, it asks you for user ID and password that you will be given for your account in Workday. So the same user ID password you are using to log into your Workday tenant will be used here. Okay. After you enter your login credentials successful, all subsequent launches within the same session, the Workday view provides one-click access directly to the relevant pages. Okay, so reset perspective, I will show you where it is. Okay. So under Windows we have perspective, and under perspective we have customized perspective, open perspective like debug, Java resources, different kind of perspective to be open. So this is by default one of the most common, or by default Workday opens this perspective like you have the main view in the center, then you have a Cloud Explorer or Project Explorer on the left. You have this properties and everything the below, and you have an outline kind of overview of your integration on the left and bottom. And this is called a Schema Explorer. So Schema Explorer are usually used to just get your web services that you can use on your Workday. Any kind of testing you want to do, or if you want to use a Schema Explorer to test a particular integration, a web service event, like you are giving access to a third-party vendor and access to a web service, but you first want to test the payload. So what you do is like go in here on the right, you have different tabs or perspectives available, components of the or views of the perspective available. Okay. So within this, you have two things under the Schema Explorer. One is Workday Web Services. So if you want to go and check any of the Workday Web Services, you add the web service from here, or the other one is a RAS report. Say ZTL, and we created any of the reports, right? So I will search for my reports that are web service enabled, or RAS reports as we call in Workday. What are the report definitions available to us? I will show you how it will appear. We have new hire report. If there is hire report, use your user A. Okay. Why so? Okay, so they have entered the user ID and password for the first one to authenticate the username and password, and then they can enter it correct. So I believe they have the setting to change the password. But as soon as we get access, right, so when this access is working, as soon as you select the environment and you put in the report name in here, if you have access to that report, it will pop up in the next window. When I click here, the next, it will give you the report name here to get selected. And as soon as you click on finish by selecting the report name, it will open the custom report web service call in a window like you open for web service tester. So this is a row so service tester that has opened to a particular web service that says add additional job request. If you want to access this web service request, you would want to call this API using this particular payload. And these are the different kind of variables available to you for entering, requesting the information. So similarly, we have for the reports as it's just like a different kind of perspective views available to you.
Can you show that again? Sorry. What did you do? The report as a service you did, right? So
on the report as a service, I did not get the report. So I just wanted to show you how would it open. So what I did is like say any of the web job, okay? So what you do is like go to the request input message, okay? You go to this and do a right click and open a request in web service tester or open soap wrap request in web service tester. You do this, so it will open the request. And here you have certain variables or things where you will need to enter values in order to test this request. So you want to do a uh, transaction on change job request. If you want to do a change job, then you will have the employee ID for whom you want to change the job. You will have the position IDs and everything. So as soon as you enter these relevant information and request it to process, it will give you a response. If the validations have been passed, it will give you a response. But for reports, what happens is like you have a similar kind of thing with launch parameters available to you. So instead of launching from the UI, what you do is like on the request, you have those launch parameters, you enter certain values, and as soon as you enter the values and hit run, it will directly give you a response as the output of the report that we XML, right? Like report, okay? Then it will. So all these, so one way is that to get it from the web service tester, and the other way is to, okay, is this enable as a web service. So this particular report is not enabled as a web service, but let me see, something is this as a web service. Okay, so this one is, so any of the reports which are enabled as a web service, you will be able to view in the web service tester or even in here. So you, as soon as you give the launch parameters, there would be something as work. Okay, so now it again asks for your authentication. So as soon as I give you the username and password, it will open the output in a similar manner that we saw the outputs be coming out of the report where when we used it in an EIB. So an XML like this would come the output. So you can see the underlying XML for that report instead of the regular tabular manner which we get on the UI. So that's how we do a request as a web service, like a report as a service for a RAS-enabled report. And the other way to do it is through Studio as well. So these are the two options, but will end up with the same result. It will give you the output in an XML manner.
Okay, so Aryan, like we create a report as a web service, right? So that is something we build. So if we want to see it in Studio, we will look for that RAS report, and then when we see it will generate some kind of XML, right? Like what
Right.
we saw in the output of the UI.
Right.
It would be similar on Studio. Okay. And
Right.
the previous thing what you showed, change job is a BP, right?
Change job is a BP, and not just a BP. For our reference, it is a web service. For us, anything that you can do using a API call or a web service call is called as an web service. So if I go into say this Explorer again, okay, so you see this W icon. If I just hover over it and click on the drop down, you see add Workday web service or add latest Workday web service. So these are the two options available to you, and you will always go with like the definition, okay, from in here, tenant, okay, now user ID authentication is again not working. Ask them to enable before us. I believe what they do is like change the password after a certain time period. That's why. Or maybe the authentication has failed after a certain time. That's why we got the Cloud Explorer loaded in here, but now the authentication is not working. But yes, if the authentication would have been working, it would give you a list of Workday web services available to you on different, I would say, on different modules like human resources, staffing, payroll, all those. Like we already have one open in here, right? So this is under staffing. So all the relevant web services for staffing module, these, and you can use these web services to perform a specific action or task using a web service call or a request instead of directly going and doing the task through a EIB, which will also follow the same BP or web service in the background. So, like you can hire an employee from the UI as well as you can hire the employee from the background using a web service call or a API call. What it will do is like use these parameters Okay, so it will use these parameters like it will say the file name, it will have a data which will have a details of the hire employee, and then hire employee data, it will have the applicant ID. So this applicant would be coming as a pre-hire or a candidate, right? So that's where the applicant ID will fall in, the organization ID, the position ID you want to hire it for, the date you want to start this employee at, that is the hire date. So you enter all these kind of details in here, and as soon as you submit this request, if all the validations get passed, it will create a hire in the tenant. So that's about perspective. So perspective is nothing but giving you different views on how you are able to see different kind of tabs in your Workday Studio platform. Okay, now coming to views, views support editors and provide alternative presentations as well as ways to navigate the information in Workday. For example, the Project Explorer and other navigation views display projects and other resources that you're working with. Perspectives offer predefined combination of views. So perspective is, say, as I told you, that yes. So perspective is this, that my views are aligned in a particular manner, and a particular view is like a Project Explorer is a view, a Cloud Explorer is a view, an outline is a view, the palette is a view, or a schema explorer on the right is a view. So all these are views. Okay. Perspective offers predefined combination of views and editors. To open a view that is not included in your current Windows Store view, from the main menu bar you can select. So what it is saying is like, as we go to perspective, we also have under the window, we have show view. Say I currently viewing Project Explorer and Cloud Explorer, right? But I want to now say view the process monitor details or the outline. Say the outline which we had here is now missing. So I closed it, but I want to reopen it to view the outline of the project assembly I'm working on. Okay. So it will open the outline view and I can then adjust it wherever I want. Say I want to have it here. Okay. So I want to have the outline here. So this outline view gets open and it will get aligned to the place you want to drag or drop it. Similarly, you can, for more views, so we have different views, like you want to see the process monitor, you want to see the properties. Properties are already getting in Schema Explorer. Say tomorrow I close this Schema Explorer, right? And now again I want to open it. I will go to show view and I will open this schema and it will pop up on its default position where it was open. And from the schema explorer, maybe you can drag and drop the size and use the report as a web service or a web service operation you want. Okay. So, but the general views that you would be requiring for the sessions or for our hands-on would be, one would be Project Explorer, that will give you all the projects sitting on your hard disk or your local drive the system. Then you have the Cloud Explorer. This will give you a list of all the Workday assemblies available to you on your tenant that has been connected to your studio. And then we have the outline, and then the other ones are the main components. Would be something as properties. Properties is a very crucial view available to you, and that will help you determine the different kind of properties you have for each of the components. Like say for store, it will help you determine the file name, like the file name is hello.html, and then on advanced tab, if you go in and you have this expires on, and well, document retention is also there. Okay, yeah, document retention. Okay, so if you go in and then provide a document retention for this store. Store is basically just the component to store the file on the event. So if you want a file to be represented on the integration event, like we saw for other CCWs or EIBs, that you can download a file from the event itself. So we use the store component. So to define the properties of the files on the store created by the store component, you can come in here on the properties and declare these details. Like you have create document retention true, you have the title of the file to be enabled, then you have all these information, like you want is that as an attachment on the event you want document retention policy, say to be 180 days. So what you do is like give it P 180D kind of. So this will make the property that the document is available for you for 180 days after the integration event. So that is the same thing that we configure on, if you remember, on the document retention for user EIBs, we have these on the attribute that how many days do you want a particular file to be available for. Okay, so similarly, if I'll go to say this is the log file we talked earlier about. If you go to the log file and you go to the properties, any component you'll have to go to the properties. You see there are three tabs now. One is message builder, the other one is advanced. But for a log file, the main tab would be message builder. So how it will help you is like you will be able to enter some text values and also the variable name to see it on the log file, how the variables getting processed or what values are being printed on those variables. So what you do is like, this is a text constant hello, and this is the way at the rate, and then within curly braces, you declare the properties or prop or the variable name that you want to display on the log file. So as we launch this integration, what it is doing is displaying you the lp.get simple data, that is name. So lp is nothing but a launch parameter enabled in here. On the log file, it will give you the launch parameter for the integration event run. So these things, the kind of things are possible. You can have a variable printed. You can have this message content is nothing but say you are putting it after the Workday RAS report call. So what message content will hold is the output of the RAS report, and you can see this output on the log file that you created. So say you created a text header, then there is something called as a line separator. Okay. So what the line separator will do is create a gap between your constant text and the message content so that you are able to easily identify these outputs. So in general use cases, what we do is like we put a comment or a text like, output. We thing like this. And what it does is like as soon as we save this, deploy it and run this integration, what it will do is like have this header. And if you want to, because a log file will always have a lot of information other than what you are intentionally trying to put. Okay, so it will have all the message flows and things coming in. But if you want to easily identify the RAS output, so you declare a header and then you give a line break. So when you are reviewing the log or viewing the log, you search for this particular text, and below that you will be able to find the XML output report. And so we will be doing this when we create assemblies. Just wanted to show you what are the different kind of views that are crucial to you. So one is Cloud Explorer, one is properties for sure. Properties is one of the major things, and then we have the palette of different components. So palette is something from where you drag and drop the different components and use it in your. We have views, view support, editors provide the thing. We have covered this view from the main menu bar. To open a view that is not included, you go to the show view and you just click on it. It will pop up in a window. Okay, project contains the files and resources needed to build and deploy a Workday Studio integration system. An assembly defines the message-based business process consisting of transport, processing steps, and routing components. So these are the names of different components. One would be transport component, one would be processing components. If you see the palette, right, you have out transport components, you have in transport components, and then you have transformation components and coding components. So these are being categorized into different kind of group on the basis of the paper form. So any kind of transportation, if in transportation that is getting the data into your integration needs to be performed, that would be in transport. Out transport would be, say you want to transmit the data from one component to another, that would be out transport. Then there would be also routers of these components later. But they are being categorized into different kind of groups, like HTTP out if you want to call, Workday out if you want to call, RAS report out if you want to call. So these help you. Workday out REST would be something you will be using to configure or web service enabled custom report that you've created. So this is the place you will be configuring your report. Okay, so the X path of the report will go in here. You can also configure from select the RAS report, and that will help you configure the RAS report. And as soon as you run the integration after deploying, this particular component will call the report into your Workday tenant in the background, and you will have that XML in your Studio Assembly. Okay. So project and assembly defines message covered. The assembly is defined within Spring-based files called assembly.xml. Assembly.xml. We have already seen the kind of coding we have for the assembly or the UI we see, the different components we see on the platform. There is definite set of code written for each of these components. Say if I select on log and go to the assembly.xml, will have this particular set for log. So this component is you are able to view as a component, but on the background it is written into an XML code like this. So that's what an assembly.xml is. Okay. And then coming to projects, I think it is saying the assembly project wizard user quickly generate an assembly project. The generated project will contain a basic assembly, new project assembly. If you want to create all required resources and work file menu, new Workday assembly project explorer menu. We have already seen yesterday the project explorer is the default project navigator, displays the assemblies at the top level, and you have the assembly where you can just double click on the assembly name and open this. So within this, we have the assembly. Say if this would have been closed, I don't want to save changes. If I want to say we have imported it into a project explorer and a project would look like this, right? And how would you open the assembly? So you go into the project name under the project explorer. There would be called as assembly. You double click on this assembly. It will open in the view and with the palette of the components available to you. Right? So that's about Project Explorer. And also, I think one of the things it showed is like creating a new assembly project. So if you're starting for a new from scratch assembly, what you do is Workday assembly, give it a name or an project is Workday runtime next, use default. This is the collection name that it would be created in this one. Okay. So now what it does is like it has created a RN project or under the project explorer, and from in here you have that RN project assembly, and I can start working. So I want to work on test start in component. That is the first component to start here, and then from here onwards I can develop my studio integration as per my need. And in case I just want to deploy this after the build has been completed, I will click on the assembly and we'll have this option to deploy to Workday. Okay, that's about opening a new project explorer on assembly and how to view the assembly from an existing project explorer. And when you are working with project in the project explorer, you are working on your local machine. The project in the project explorer are pointed to the files stored on your hard drive. As mentioned earlier, these are on your hard drive unless until you deploy it to the cloud, and they are available under the cloud explorer section. They are only saved on your hard drive. If you delete from the project, it will remain on a local drive unless you check the box. Yes. Say I do not require this project explorer anymore, and if I want to delete this project assembly, what I need to do is like delete, and unless and check this, delete the project contents on the it will go from my project explorer, but it will still sit on my hard disk, taking up the memory. So what I need to do if I really want to erase it from my project explorer as well as my workspace, I need to enable this checkbox and click on OK. And now it has deleted it from my project explorer as well as my local workspace or my directory on the disk. So that's what it is showing you in here. The project and the project explorer point. Okay, talking about the cloud explorer view. The cloud explorer is a view into your tenant. What you see on this view is what is deployed in the tenant identified in the connection details. everything is secured. So if you do not have access to an integration system, you will not be able to launch it. Okay. So these are, this is nothing but what we talked about initially. Once, and let me close this so that we are able to expand this. So this palette. Okay, so this is the view for Cloud Explorer, and if they had connected it initially, we were able to load this different kind of integrations available to us on this particular tenant. They have configured that as DPT1 for, okay. So these are the different integrations available to you. So you can see all of these integration assemblies if you want. Say you want to see the INT00 or Studio for import currency conversion rate. You want to import monthly correction report service. Yeah, no, this is not the assembly. You have Studio adjustment and you have start here component. Okay. And if you want to now, as I told you, there are two options: either go to the UI, go to the integration event, go to the CLAR file and download it. Otherwise, what you can also do is, since they're not connected right now, I'm not getting this option. This is grayed out. What also you can do is like go to the Cloud Explorer, and from the Cloud Explorer itself, for each of the integrations, you will have a start here for each of the assemblies, right? So what we do is like right click on that particular start here name and then go to import source. So as soon as you click on import source, it will open up a dialog box and check for certain things. It will ask that if there are any naming conflicts, say you have same kind of assembly being opened already in your project explorer, how you want to behave, or you want to ignore the namespaces, you want to ignore the name mismatches and all. So if you check or uncheck that and proceed, once you finish it, that particular integration system will be available for you under the Project Explorer. So this is another way to import. One of the ways is to go to the UI, go to the tenant, go to the integration system as we saw it earlier, download the CLAR file, okay, like we did here for a particular adjustment continuous cloud service load. And this was imported through, this can be imported through a import CLAR file option. And the other option is to go to Cloud Explorer, open the integration, and on the start here of that particular integration, you just right click and import. So these are the two options available to you to import CLAR files of an existing integration that is available on your tenant. Okay, so that's about it on the Cloud Explorer view. I think the agendas we had for introduction was this. I think we have covered all. Let's see what is there. Okay. So now the next part is assemblies. So since this is a new module, we will be starting it in the next session. So any doubts or any questions regarding the topic we have covered about introduction to Workday Studio Platform? So this was just an introduction to Studio Platform or the application. We have not developed or created any integration or a Studio integration in particular, using the components or assemblies. So this was to familiarize you with the UI of the platform we are using to develop Studio integration. So I would encourage you or request you all to go ahead and see all the things we have discovered or went through during the session. Try to open different kind of perspective. Try to open the views we have and see if you want to do a particular component. Maybe you can. Maybe you do not create integration, but you just explore, you drag and drop certain components in here like this and just try to read their properties, what it is trying to say, how it is saying. Especially the start in here component, you will see a lot of tabs in here. You will have attributes, you will have services. So there will be relevance of each of these things in the start here component, because this is the first component where you start your integration. So just go in there and explore whatever you can and maybe come up with questions. Okay.